Well, I don't know if anybody had this circled on their calendar to start the season, but this is shaping up to be one of the best matches of the week. Rams and Jags battling it out at Wemby. We'll see in the simulation if this Jacksonville defense can contain Puka and the Rams. However, first we've got to get behind the bar and make our drink a fuzzy sheep. Well, it's the beginning of the end. Kinda. Obviously, there's still a whole lot of season left, but this is the last of the London games. Our next international game isn't until week 10 in Berlin. This is also the Jaguars' last primetime game, which honestly is a good thing because Jacksonville is brutal to come up with drinks for. As for the Rams, they still have 2 more primetime games, but they're also far easier to find drinks for. As a matter of fact, the representative this week comes to us courtesy of Smirnoff themselves. It's the Rampede. Now, as far as these hyper-corporate Smirnoff creations go, the Rampede might actually be the most creative one. First off, obviously, it's an incredibly visually striking drink. Alright, I'm personally not a big fan of layered drinks. I think they feel kind of tacky, you get all of this wonderful aesthetic points, but in order to actually enjoy the drink, you gotta mix it all up and ruin that aesthetic. But I cannot deny that this one is super visually striking. Now, how much of that is movie magic versus actual things, I don't know, but regardless, absolutely on brand, nailed the visuals. Now, another reason this drink intrigues me so much is that it calls for a pretty strange ingredient: coconut syrup. Now, coconut syrup is certainly used in other drinks. According to Difford's guide, there are 17 cocktails that call for it, but it's far more rare than its tiki cousin, cream of coconut. Cream of coconut, also known as Coco Lopez if you're using the most common brand name, can be found in classic tiki cocktails like the Pina Colada, the Painkiller, even the Blue Hawaiian, whereas this is probably the most famous drink to use coconut syrup. Now, the reason why cream of coconut wasn't used in this drink is pretty obvious. The thicker, opaque cream of coconut would ruin the beautiful visuals of this drink. But then that raises the question, if the coconut syrup is invisible, why was it included in this drink at all? And that's the point where I have to conclude that somebody working on this drink actually cared about what the flavor profile of it would be and decided to add in that coconut flavor from the coconut syrup. Now, I may have been intrigued by LA's representative, but the same cannot be said for Jacksonville's representative, the Fuzzy Navel. It's peach schnapps and orange juice. It's a screwdriver with a weaker, sweeter liqueur substituted for the vodka. It is a poster child for the dark age of cocktails, aka the 1960s to late 80s, early 90s. Why did I choose it for Jacksonville? 2 reasons. 1, the drink predominantly features orange juice, and Florida is very famous for its oranges. And 2, you look at Jackson DeVille and tell me he doesn't have the fuzziest navel you've ever seen. And finally, this wonderful matchup is being held in London, so what little nod to the host country are we gonna include? I've used tea, I've used sloe gin, and as I was doing my brainstorming for this drink, I kept running into the inescapable fact that the English are kind of boring. But you know who isn't boring? The Scots.
I'm Scottish!
That's right, we're putting Scotch in this drink. Now, as a Scotch enjoyer, I had 2 options for which Scotch to put into this drink: a Singleton 12-year and an Ardbeg 10-year. And honestly, these 2 Scotches could not be more different. They actually kind of represent 2 ends of the Scotch spectrum, which is my second favorite spectrum. The Singleton is buttery smooth, just flowing over your tongue, carrying with it a very mild flavor palette, predominantly of, honey and vanilla, those sorts of sweet flavors. In contrast, the Ardbeg is pure, unadulterated peat, engulfing your senses with that intense smoke flavor and all of the wonderful secondary notes that come with it. So, which of these scotches for our drink? Honestly, the Ardbeg is my special occasion bottle, and while I do think it would be really interesting in this drink, it kind of feels like using an A5 Wagyu for barbecue. So, as a result, we are not going to use it. We are instead going to use the Singleton. I would be very interested to see what a peaty scotch does in this drink, but that exploration will have to wait until a later date. So, that being said, our final spec for this drink is going to be 1.5 ounces of our scotch. I have a feeling this one is going to get, mostly drowned out in this drink. But that's kind of okay. I think we're going for a smoother, sort of, more easily enjoyable drink. So we're going to go with a more mild Scotch. 1 ounce of peach schnapps. That wonderful artificial peach flavor. Those peach gummies. Getting all of that up in this drink. For better or for worse. Half an ounce of our coconut syrup. There's a bunch of different brands. I don't think it really matters. You could use a cream of coconut. I'd be interested to see how that would change. I don't know if it has more or less coconut flavor. It'll certainly change the texture a little bit. It'll be a little bit thicker. 1.5 ounces of pineapple juice. Carrying this over from the Rampede. Love pineapple juice. Honestly, it's one of my personal favorites. Cannot get enough of it. Put that over there. And then 1.5 ounces of orange juice. We weren't going to be able to use the fuzzy navel as, inspiration and then not have orange juice in this drink. Could you use fresh squeezed orange juice, and would that be better? Almost certainly. But, who the fuck do you think was making fuzzy navels with fresh squeezed orange juice? They're using shit that came out of a bottle. If they're lucky. If it wasn't just pure concentrate. All right. We're going to shake that up. And then I'm going to open pour this into our highball glass. All right. And this right here is our fuzzy sheep. Let's give it a try. Ooh. Okay, we got the good ending on this one. So, with all of those different sort of sweeteners in there, right? We have pineapple juice, we have orange juice, we have coconut syrup, we have peach schnapps, which is very sweet, as we've established previously. I was really worried that this drink was just going to be super sweet, super cloying, and just like an absolutely disgusting, monstrosity out of the 70s. The good ending, which is what we've gotten here, is that we have something that's still sweet. It's still certainly a dessert drink or like a beach drink. It's very easy to drink, but it's not over sweet. It's not cloying. The flavors, the pineapple juice brings enough acid, and the coconut syrup comes at it from a very different direction than the peach schnapps and the orange juice. And as a result, you get what you get in a well-balanced tiki drink, where all of these, ingredients, they're all acting, from different directions. And as a result, they sort of cancel each other out to a degree and prevent the drink from becoming too sweet, too cloying. Obviously, as predicted, that Scotch gets completely washed out. You could probably substitute it for whatever ingredient, like whatever base spirit you wanted in this drink. There's maybe a little bit of it coming through in like the after notes, right? Sort of once that initial wave of sugar has passed and it's just sort of the alcohol bubbling off, you get a little bit of that sort of Scotch character. It would be very interesting to see what a peaty Scotch does to this one. I'm just not wasting any of my Ardbeg burying it under all of this. Yeah, this is a drink that is, made to be enjoyed in like a hammock somewhere. It is not going to ask a lot of you, but it is going to give, a very sort of well-rounded, well-balanced bouquet of those sort of classic tiki flavors, I think in order to be, a truly good drink, it probably needs one more note to sort of add some sharpness to it, to come in with some real bite from somewhere. It's just a little bit too laid back to be truly interesting. But it is, considering the possible outcomes, This is the good ending. This is a nice little drink to sip on right here. And surprisingly, the peach schnapps, this is kind of funny. I think the peach schnapps in this drink is balanced a lot better than it was in the Buffalo versus Atlanta drink. I think that one, because it kind of was on its own, it didn't really have the support that it needed. Whereas in this drink, with so many other flavors, it can kind of take a back seat and you don't really feel the lack of quality, so to speak, behind that liqueur. It can just kind of, like tiki drinks, do, add this little note that comes through occasionally on each sip, but which is, very much in, concert with the coconut and with the orange and with the pineapple. It is reminiscent of a pina colada in some ways, actually. All right, well, a very smooth, easy sipper to start our morning off with this matchup. Let's see what the result is in the simulation. We're still in London, but Wembley instead of Tottenham this time. Jags get the ball first, and this is shaping up to be a much better matchup than I initially thought at the beginning of the season. Jacksonville's offense starts off strong, marching down the field before capping off their opening drive with a 10-yard touchdown to Dyami Brown. Now this Jaguars defense specializes in getting takeaways, and they add another halfway through this first quarter, knocking the ball from Kyron's hands and recovering it at midfield. On third down at the end of the third quarter, the Rams defense finally gets a stop, limiting the damage of the turnover to only 3 points. From the 41-yard line, Stafford drops back and unloads an absolute missile to a streaking Puka, who has a solid yard on his defender and hauls it in for the Rams' first TD. The Jaguars kill a ton of clock on their next drive, taking it all the way down to the 2-minute warning, where Lawrence dumps off a screen to Etienne, who trots it in untouched for the 11-yard touchdown. This Rams offense is clicking now, though, and they only need 1 minute to make it to the red zone, where Stafford threads a perfectly placed ball to Devontae, cutting Jacksonville's lead to 3. The Rams defense then holds off the Jags' 2-minute drill attempt, leaving the score 17-14 at the half. The Rams start with the ball in the second half, but don't keep it for long, as Devin Lloyd picks it off for Jacksonville's second takeaway of the game. This time, the Rams defense isn't able to do much of anything, and Etienne takes it right up the middle to extend Jacksonville's lead to 2 scores. That short drive aside, the third quarter really is the quarter of both defenses, as both teams trade punts for a while. This continues into the fourth, as Jacksonville tries a screen on 3rd and long, but the Rams sniff it out and stop Etienne well short of the first. However, the Jags are close enough to attempt a 54-yarder, and Little's big leg sends it through the upright, extending their lead to 13. Matthew Stafford is always a threat, though, and with just under 3 minutes left, he hits Tutu Atwell on the out route for LA's third touchdown, and it's a 1-score game again. The Rams defense gets a stop, so it's 4th and 4 for Stafford and the offense. Minute and a half left in the game. He hits Atwell on the curl, but the ball is knocked loose. Jacksonville takes over on downs and kneels out the rest of the clock, leaving London with a 27-21 victory. Honestly, these are two teams where I didn't know what to expect going into the season. For the Rams, that was because I wasn't sure how Stafford would continue to hold up, and if I'm being honest, the Jags are kind of my NFL blind spot. I feel like I never know what's going on in the AFC South. Based on how the season has gone for both of these teams, though, this actually feels like a surprisingly accurate prediction. Two very similar and very solid quarterback performances in this game, throwing for nearly identical yardages, 246 to 243. Despite throwing the ball less, Stafford did a little bit more with it, notching 3 TDs, but also having that costly interception. Lawrence was really a game manager in this one, but he managed it excellently. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 80+ completion percentage. Both of these running backs had really respectable games as well, even if Etienne's efficiency was a bit shit. 50 some odd yards for both of them, and while Etienne made up for his lack of efficiency with a rushing TD, Kyron instead records another costly fumble in this matchup. Now, thankfully, Madden didn't have Matthew Stafford scrambling all over the place, and 4 scrambles for 36 yards is actually pretty on target for Trevor, especially by Madden standards. Both of these quarterbacks really spread the ball around a lot, with 3 different receivers recording 7 catches, and nobody recording more than 100 yards or 2 touchdowns. All of these yardage totals are quite reasonable, And while it's been basically a year since ETN has seen 7 targets, the fact that he has seen that volume before means it's not unprecedented. In terms of receiving stats, Kyren draws the short straw here as well, as his 1 catch came far behind the line of scrimmage, leaving him with -7 receiving yards on the day. With how reasonable the Madden stats were in this game, it's perhaps not surprising that they largely agree with the Monte Carlo stats. Both of these quarterbacks suffer slight regression in their passing yards, but that's expected. The makeup of the Jaguars' backfield shifts, as the rookie outproduces ETN, while Kyren dominates over on the Rams' side of the sheet. Honestly, the biggest change in the receivers is probably Travis Hunter seeing significant involvement in the passing game in the Monte Carlo sim after being completely absent from the Madden stats. Finally, the Monte Carlo sim sees this as a very evenly matched game with essentially 4 equally likely outcomes: a 14-14 tie, a 21-21 tie, a 21-14 Jags victory, and a 21-14 Rams victory. With that square of scores, it's perhaps unsurprising that averaging the results of all 10,000 games gives an 18-18 final score. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the smooth sipping Fuzzy Sheep. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.